Hi, my name is Jack McLean and I'm the founder of Prepare Like a Pro. Growing up, I loved playing cricket and football and had a strong passion for helping others. Over the past 11 years working in the industry, I've been lucky enough to have worked alongside Sean Murphy, the head strength and conditioning coach at Essendon, Luke Boyd, physical performance manager at Hawthorn, and interned under Andrew Russell, high performance director at Carlton. I started Prepare Like a Pro after my time as a strength and conditioning coach at Hawthorn Football Club to help developing footballers gain a competitive edge with AFL standard preparation methods. If you're a developing footballer wanting to take your game to the next level, we'd love to help you. At Prepare Like a Pro, you can expect to not only improve your athleticism, but also lower your risk of injury or overload. There are training programs suitable for every level of involvement. I would love to help you choose the one that best suits your goals and personal motivation. Head to our Inquire Now page and I'll get back to you soon. Welcome back to the Prepare Like a Pro live chats. Tonight on the show we have Anthony Koutoufides, also known as Kouta. He is a former AFL footballer with the Carlton Football Club, considered by many as one of the most powerful and athletic players of all time. He played in almost every position and was often called the prototype of the modern day footballer. During his career, he captained the side, won the leading goal kicker and premiership player and 5 times All-Australian, now inspiring people to be better and live a healthy and active lifestyle. So really looking forward to this chat. If you've got questions for Kouta, hit the chat box. And we'll spend some time on that at the end of the interview. Before we start Prepare Like a Pro live chats, our mission here is to empower aspiring athletes and staff with practical knowledge from some of the industry's most inspiring individuals and to strengthen the AFL community. If you like the show, please show support by following us on Instagram and subscribing to the podcast. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Here we go, guys. Just bear with me. How you going, Kouta?
Very good, Jack. Thanks for having me on, mate. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, mate. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate your time, especially late at night and with everything going on in the world. It's really appreciate you coming on. We'll dive right into it, mate. Take us back to the beginning. Young Kouta, at what age did you discover you had a passion for AFL football?
I was 8 years old, Jack. I went to a local primary school, Layla East Primary. We had over 1,000 kids at our school. I had an older brother, Paul, who was a year older than myself, and our friends introduced us to the oval ball, and we instantly fell in love with it. And I think they seen that we had a little bit of ability in sport, and our friends, they said, why don't you come down to the local footy club and try out? And we said, all right. We didn't tell our mum and dad, and we thought we were just going for a casual kick. And after, a few hours in Melbourne, it got pitch dark, and my dad and mum, they were just like roaming the street of where we lived, like, have you seen the boys? Have you seen the boys? And we appeared a little bit later, and they were furious. And we told them, we want to play this game of football, and they both said no. And we had this wonderful Australian family that said, if you really want to play, we'll pick you up from home and take you to the games. And that's how we started at 8 years of age. We fell in love with the game.
Wow. Sorry, I missed the start. What was the connection with that family? The family, are they neighbours or?
Oh, yeah, no, they were just, they had their son who played in that team. And I don't know, I think they seen that we had a little bit of ability. So they were an Australian family and said, if you want to play, we'll pick you up and take you to the games. And so my parents didn't come along, but halfway through the year, my father decided to start taking us to the games. My mum still refused. So my dad was Greek, mum was Italian. And then my mum thought by the next year I better start, have a look at what this is all about. And they both fell in love with the game. Never missed not one single game that I played, even when I was playing senior footy. So it was just a wonderful game for us being, the migrants, European, that it brought us out of our way of living and started to really understand the Australian culture.
Yeah, absolutely. What sport did they want you to play?
Probably soccer, maybe basketball. Yeah, my mum, her family was all soccer background, being Italians, you can imagine. My dad was actually born in Egypt, but of Greek background, and he played basketball there. So I don't know I guess if they had to choose, no doubt probably would have said soccer. But I never enjoyed that round ball. I don't know. Like there was a lot of European kids at school that loved it, and they were a lot shorter. They're probably a little bit too quick for me with their feet. And I think the game of footy just helped me a little bit more, being a little bit taller, and to be able to jump and being able to mark and things like that. I fell in love with the game, and I think iconically in Australia too, when you look at two sports, when I was growing up, 70s and 80s, it was cricket or football. And to me, the footballers were just iconic. They were just like superhuman. They looked like, beasts. And it was almost like, mate, they were scary. And it was a very physical game. So they were like warriors. And so I guess if I wanted to be, play any sport, I wasn't going to be soccer here in Australia. I want to be a footballer more so than a soccer player.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's a great story. I haven't heard that one before. Imagine if those. Have you stayed in touch with that family?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. His name's Shane Watts, and he's living in Perth now, but very close with my brother and I. Wonderful family. I always remind everyone, he was the one that his family were the ones that took it to the game and brought us home, and I catch up with him often when playing, and mum and dad really loved them. They were a very lovely family.
And what you mentioned, your dad turned first halfway through the season. He started taking you and your brother to the game. What did he start to pick on? What did he just notice that you guys were getting obsessed by it and you sort of loved the game? Is that what drew him to start taking you guys?
Well, there was one time that family saw mum and dad at the front and they said, we're going to come out and speak to your parents. And I was thinking, because I don't really speak English, but you can try, and somehow they conveyed, like your kids have got a little bit of talent, you should support them. And that's when Dad decided to take us along to the games. He wasn't very familiar with the roads in Stream Melbourne and couldn't read a Melways. So you've got to be frustrated at times. And, we're trying to navigate through the Melways. I was 8 years old. My brother was 9, and my dad, he swore a little bit in the car, but we eventually got there. We always allowed for time. And then I'm not sure whether my dad was the person who said to my mum, you got to come along, mate. That became their obsession, everything that we did in sport, they were there to support us the entire way. And I always say that I never would have made senior footy if it wasn't for the support of my parents, who just kept drilling into me that you're the best. I don't know. And in particular, my mum just always praising, even if I had a bad game. And so every time there was tough moments, my family support, my two brothers were always there for me. And that just made it, easier through many difficult times.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks so much for sharing. Your experiences as a young footballer. And then, what age did you discover yourself that you're like, this is something that I can pursue and it can become a career?
Well, the first year I didn't know. I think I started back pocket, and they said you've got to go stand back pocket. I don't think I moved from that spot, but then you started to learn the game, and then by the time I was 9, I started to dominate games. So even in primary school, in grade 4, my brother was in grade 5, and the teachers were saying to my brother, can you ask your brother to play in the school footy team? And that was against grade 6s also. And I'm like, no, I'm not playing. They were older than me, a year or two older. And they're like, the teacher kept, tell your brother, please. So eventually I gave in. I started playing at full forward, and I was kicking all these goals, in grade 4 against grade 5s and 6s. We got to the grand final. We lost by a point. And then the next year in grade 5, same thing. We got to the grand final again, lost by a point. And then by grade 6, I was Lalo East captain. And not only did we win our zone, we went on to be the best metropolitan team. And then we came up against the best country team. But they were mate, they were farmers. You know what I mean? They were men. And we're these slickers, mate. We're soft. And these guys were mate, we're looking at them going, mate, where did these guys come from? And I was captain. I'm like, boys, what are we doing here? So it wasn't a good thing. As a captain and leader, I didn't give the boys much confidence when we started, and we lost that game. And that was Park. So I guess from an early age, I showed quite a bit of ability in football and in sport in general.
And you mentioned full forward. Is that where you spent most of your junior? That was your main position?
No, I was a ruckman. It was only on primary school, maybe grade 4, they needed me at full forward, and I played there. I can't remember grade 5, but by grade 6, I was in the ruck because I was already grade 5, I was a state high jump champion. And so, I could run and jump, and that's what I did. I played my entire career in the ruck, and then occasionally maybe centre forward. But really, I just rucked the whole way through. Even when I played Till Cup under-17s, I started as a ruckman at 1.90 m against guys that were 2 meters tall. But eventually, Dennis Pagan, who was our coach, put me a centre-half back, and I was able to play really good there, make the All-Australian team. So pretty much rucked the entire way through my career. And although I wasn't maybe the tallest guy out there in terms of jumping, I don't think I really lost many tap outs really.
You mentioned that you're state champion at high jump. Take us through, for the developing footballers listening that are around that high school age that want to get better with their athleticism.
Yeah.
Did athletics help you, do you think? Did it help your football?
100% it did. I started athletics. My brother started first in the summertime of that first year we played footy, and then I watched him for half a season compete before I had the courage to get out and start competing. And by the time I was in grade 5, I was state high jump champion with I don't know, I trained, but not too much training. And then it wasn't until I was 14 I actually got some proper coaching from the national coaches. There was an athletics clinic at the old Olympic Park where Collingwood Football Stadium is now, where they train. And they spotted me out and said, we want to train you. And I said, all right, I'll come along. So I started going from Ladle on the train after school to Olympic Park to train there. I became Australian champion high jumper. And and then because I was a multi-event, like decathlete as well, I started learning all these other events, and then hurdles just started to just go kaboom as well, where I became an Australian champion hurdler under 17s with an Australian record. So I got beaten in the high jump by Tim Forsyth, who still, I think, currently holds the national record with Starks. And they were the 2 last Commonwealth Games gold medalists. But Tim Forsyth he still holds a second, not the world junior record, not number 1, but second in the high jump at 2:29. So I lost my title to him. I jumped 2:08, he jumped 2:16. He was too good by the time I was 16. I was 16 years of age, and he was probably 6 months younger than me. But when he came down to Olympic Park, you could see that this kid was built for high jump. My shoulders started to get a little bit bigger, and because I was playing footy in the winter, probably didn't help. And, running a few more kilometres and not just doing the power athletics training. But athletics as a general sport, I think it's almost like a must. I always tell my kids that do athletics, and it's just the time factor, because it is a long day. I mean, I used to do 6 or 7 events when I competed at the senior athletics when I was in, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So I just did them all, like a heap of events. And so that kept me busy, constantly, doing events. Whereas other clubs might have had 1 or 2 athletes per event. We, as Keon Park, we had Gary Honey. You know Gary Honey? Do you remember Gary Honey? Jack?
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Here's a bit of history for you. 1984 Los Angeles Olympic Games. Gary Honey won a silver medal behind one of the greatest athletes of all time, Carl Lewis. He jumped something like 8 meters, 30 or 40, I don't know. He was second behind Carl Lewis in 1984. So his nephew, Josh Honey, plays for Carlton now. Josh's father never won a bronze medal at the Commonwealth Games pole vault. So an incredible Olympic family. And I played under 19s with their younger brother, Paul Honey, who's another great guy as well. They're just phenomenal athletes. So Gary Honey came from the same club as myself, so I followed his footsteps afterwards. It's folded now, but we had only a few athletes, but we won state championships just with 8 or 9 athletes, whereas someone like Doncaster would have 22 athletes, for the thing. So it was a great time in athletics. It helped my footy. It helped it immensely in terms of power and speed and jumping ability. Before the game was like an athletic game like what it is now, because there was a lot of endurance running 5100s, which was terrible. It didn't help me, because when I got there, I looked different to the other footballers there because of some of the things that I could do.
And I guess not just doing the training, but also being in that environment with the Honey, that pedigree, seeing that athleticism. How important is it to you? It sounds like from a young age you're always competing against people that are older than you. How important is it to see performance and see success?
Yeah, I never competed with Gary Honey. He was a bit before my time, but I went to the same club and competed with him. But we had phenomenal athletes, Jack. I grew up in Ladle Thomastown. It was the northern part of Melbourne. There was a lot of migrant families, Australian families. We grew up together. We rode bikes. We were out in the parks. We were playing games. It was non-stop. We didn't have video games like kids, unfortunately, now. And it's not easy for the kids to go out like we did. We had freedom back then. And it was an unbelievable time to be alive in Australia. But we just had phenomenal athletes around my area. And, there's another guy, Jerry Martinov, who was like state 100, 200 meter champion, and he was in the same primary school as me. We both were state champions in grade 5. We went on both to play Carlton under 19s. He became, I think he won a silver medal in the 100 or 200 or long jump, like nationals. So he was another phenomenal athlete. And then I'm talking about how many players that we had playing at the Carlton under 19s in our area too, that we were able to drive in together. And I often say how lucky we were that I was surrounded by just great athletes. And, as much as it was like peer group pressure, to maybe do the wrong things, we were just laser focused on sport. And so my circle of influence and friends that I grew up with were just sport mad, which I love because, there's a lot of other kids that did things that, I didn't want to do. And if you end up in the wrong crowd, you could easily get persuaded to do those sort of things. And I was lucky enough that where I grew up, we had phenomenal athletes.
And you mentioned the training that you were doing. What would be a typical week when you were 16 years old? Like, are you training every day? How often are you competing?
Jack, I was a bit lazy, in all honesty. I think I was a bit more of a natural athlete than more one that was like, I've just got to train and train harder. I think things may have come a little bit too easy for me. But in saying that, if I was coached and told what to do, I would just do it. So I was very coachable. So I used to go to Olympic Park twice a week. So, go to school, be there all day, catch a train all the way to Jolimont, walk across Jolimont to Olympic Park, train for an hour and a half, 2 hours, get back on the train starving, hungry because I hadn't eaten all day, and get home at Thomastown train station and either walk home or Dad pick me up or get the bus home or whatever. And they were long days. And I'm not going to say I looked forward to them, but geez, they were just memorable days. And there were some phenomenal athletes back then as well. Kyle Vanderkop that trained there, he may still have the Australian 110 metre hurdles title. I think he's an Indigenous athlete who was just phenomenal. And there was a lot of other great. Jai Tarima, who won a silver medal at the Olympic Games in Sydney. I competed against him too in the hurdles and decathlon. And so, I competed against some really incredible athletes in my time, and who did really well.
And at that time, were you doing athletics for a dream to be an AFL footballer? Were you doing it because you just simply loved it and you just wanted to be with your mates at athletics club? Like, what was your mindset at that time?
I loved it, Jack. I loved athletics. Did I love it more than footy? Maybe in some ways, because athletics was like, man, you stand there and we end there. If you win, you're the winner. Or high jump, if you jump higher than me, or if you throw that further than me, you're the winner. Football was a bit like, you get judged by recruiters or coaches, or I think he was the best on ground. When you think, well, how could he be when I thought, there's a lot of that. But team sport is the best too in saying that too, because athletics can be lonely. So there's the good and bad in both. But my dream was either to represent Australia at the Olympics, as an athlete, or play AFL footy. And I know I got invited to the AEST. I got invited to a college in America for a scholarship for athletics. I didn't even realise it was a Division 1 college until recently, when my mum showed me the letter. And because I had no thoughts of moving from home, because having a European mum, she did everything for me, and I was not going to go and start to do all that stuff for myself as yet back then. And so, so I had a few offers from everything. But at the age of 17, the Carlton Football Club called me up and offered me a 3-year contract. And was it a tough decision? I think as I walked in there, I think my heart knew that I was going to just sign the contract, and I was going to become a full-time footballer from that point onwards.
Yeah, okay. So because of the 3-year contract, it was a no-brainer. But what if that contract didn't come at 17? Could you see yourself potentially still continuing the athletics for a bit longer, or?
I would have, no doubt. I loved it that much. And I loved the decathlon because I was, okay at quite a few events, not all of them. And, but I would have pursued, no doubt, the hurdles, because the hurdles, I took up it a little bit more serious just a couple of years before I got the Australian record. Before that, I was just a casual hurdler. My brother Paul became state 110 hurdles champion. And so he was older than me, 13 months, mate. If he was there, I'm going to compete against you, And I started to compete against him. And slowly he could see that I was starting to beat him. And that's when I started to become, that little bit, started winning state titles and stuff like that. And my times improved dramatically. And my friends never forget, there was one time I knocked the hurdle and fell down in an important race, and I got back up, and somehow my brother was screaming, come on, somehow I just got over the line and won. And still to this day, they just sit there and they just go, how'd you do? I said, I got no idea. But when I was chasing them, I was just chasing without a thought. So, I don't know, it was great times, man. Just sport back then, I have so many wonderful memories about it.
And you mentioned that the athletic side came naturally early, and your brother obviously had a bit of talent with it and competitiveness as well, and you guys pushed each other. Did your parents, were they into sport, and what were their upbringing like with competitive sport?
My dad used to tell me he was a good basketballer, and so did his friends. I don't know. I never seen that. He never really did any sort of training, and there was this skinny man with a big gut. And I guess back then they were all a little bit like that. They just ate, they didn't train, had cigarettes, and did all that stuff. My mum, she never played sport, and but she'll tell me that her brothers were really good at soccer. In particular, one Giordano, his name was, who I met them all, and I don't know. They tell me that they were good, so I'm not 100% sure. But so somehow they produced a couple of kids that had decent athleticism.
Yep. And you've mentioned your family, your parents, your brother, and also Shane Watts as strong influences. Are there other people that spring to mind that were strong early days to develop yourself?
I think a lot of my mates, and I mentioned Jerry Martin before, had another friend, Peter Lambeth, Viv Ramido. I'm going to miss a few here, and I know they were probably the ones that were like my closest friends, and I can't think of others. But yeah, they were the ones really. I mean, we hung around together, and we trained, and we always did things together, and carpooled together to events, and played footy together at the same footy clubs, and they were really good mates, and they were the reason we went. I went as far as I did. Whether it was cricket or tennis or whatever we played, basketball, we just went hard. And then I had, of course, my best mate Sash, and how could I forget Sash? He came later on in my life. He remembered me in grade 4. He was from a different primary school, and he was in the team too. But he remembered me as a tall, lanky kid. And I think he said I was a bit arrogant because he went and shake my hand after the game, and I just gave him nothing, But he became my best mate, and when I was playing AFL footy, he was one of my greatest supporters as well, and he was fitter than me. So even though I was playing AFL footy, he could run like crazy. So, often off-season or in between that Christmas period, we'd go for runs, and he'd just push me, and he was always by my side. So he was another great influence for me.
Yeah. And you mentioned your body when you went into football. As a professional footballer, your body was at a different level than your peers because of that athletic training and the power. How did you go? Were you able to maintain that power when you went into the system?
No, it went very quickly. I went back one weekend. I thought, I'm not going to train Saturday morning. That's to flog us for 3 hours. I said, no, I'm just going to go back to athletics for a day. My high jump went from 2 meters 8 to about 1.80 meters. Like it was too hard. Like we ran on the roads 8 or 9 kilometers. We did 5100s. It was my first year there. And then because I was an athlete, they put me in the first group. Well, maybe I could run 100 meters, but 200 meters, I started to get a bit tired. And for 400, 800, I didn't have good endurance. I was more of a power athlete. Do 5100s in the fastest group in my first year, man, I blew up. My knees started getting knee tendonitis. I lost a lot of my jumping ability and athleticism because of the training it was back then. It was really hard. It was too hard. I think if I came into the system now, the way that it was, where they manage the players better and don't run crazy like that and manage the bodies, I probably would have been a lot better off. But in saying that, it's still, I walked in at a great time and learnt a lot, and it made me the person that I am now. So I don't have any regrets. But in terms of athleticism, 100%. My body and the knee tendonitis, it got to me. We didn't have the best physios or doctors back then. They came maybe 93, 94. They were so much better and a lot smarter. And then the science started to come a bit more into the game as well, where they started to look after the first year draft picks, which you need to do because and they were probably more prepared than me because I never really had a pre-season in footy. I never really got any specialised training. I just, I played Carlton under-19s, don't get me wrong, which was great. And then I played Chill Cup. But this system that they've got now, they just, train them so they're a bit more maybe ready for AFL more so than what we were.
And what about the weights training side of things? With the athletics, did you do much work in the gym, or did that just start when you were a professional footballer?
Yes, I didn't do any in the gym. It was all plyometrics, all body weight stuff that we did back then, and that was such good training. You have to have a strong body to be able to do that, and maybe I was a little bit young and maybe not quite prepared for it. Maybe I had longer term issues because of it. I'm not sure, but that was great training. I loved the standing long jumps, standing triple jumps. You know, the steps and all that stuff, the hops that we did. That made me very powerful, and so. That there was the sort of training that I think is great for young kids. You know, the plyometric sort of training. That's the way to go. And the athleticism came because of that. What was the question? I forgot. It was.
Just interested in terms of your athleticism, because it had that power and that speed and explosiveness. Was a little bit to do with the strength training.
You said the weight.
Yeah,
the
it
weight.
sounds like you did more power based stuff, not all body weight up until that point. And the gym started as a footballer.
Yeah, as soon as I started the football, that's when the weights started. And I'll be honest, I cheated a little bit in the weight room because I was like, nah, don't worry about weights, you don't need them. And that was 91 because I got there in 1990 for the 91 season, but I didn't play a game. And then at the end of that year, I just thought, you know what, if I'm going to play senior footy, I have to get a bit stronger. I started hitting the weights properly. I put on, I don't know, like it was so quick that I went from, I think 83 kilos to 91, maybe within a 6-week period. I fell in love with weights. You know, I was like, man, you can look good for the beach too, and it helps your footy. And so I started to fall in love with the weights training, and I put on size like that. But what I didn't realise, it was when we ran the tan. My times in that first pre-season, I ran 14:43, I think it was. Then after putting on 8 or 9 kilos, I actually ran 17:22. 17:22, like as an AFL athlete. And I remember David Parkin coming up to me and saying, Kouta, with that sort of time, you're not going to play senior footy. And I said, mate, I don't know. I don't know if I'm feeling a bit sick, or how can I go from 14:43 to 17:22? He said, you've got to do it again. I said, yeah, okay, no worries. And I ran 16:40 or something. Like I couldn't run, but I didn't realise and I never got taught, and no one taught me, is that because all of a sudden I put on 8 or 9 kilos, my endurance running, and I wasn't great before, just went. So my advice is to any kids that are, watching out there, if you're going to put on size through the gym, make sure you're still running throughout it so the body adapts. Because I tend to have done it like pretty much in an off-season period, and we didn't have a lot of time off-season. But I don't know, it came on very quick as I started to do the weight. So it really affected my endurance running. But my game went to another level in 1992 because of my strength. So the club started playing me a fullback, and I started pretty much beating all my opponents. So I was able to win the best and first in the reserves in 1992. And I played only 6 senior games, but that size just, started to, and the boys even recognised it too. They're like, man, how'd you put on so much size? And it was just by doing weights.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of good messages there from an athlete development point of view. The fact that you didn't start weights, but you did a lot of high-intensity, speed-based bodyweight stuff and built your power is also good for young footballers to listen to. If you want to get faster, you've got to train fast.
100%. I agree with you. And so I always say to people too, just be wary of weights. But young kids want to get there and start doing heavy weights because they look at people. I didn't really touch weights properly until I was almost 19. And so, you can do all that body weight stuff. You've got plyometrics. You can even do, maybe lighter weights or whatever you need to do with it, power and all that. Yes, isolated movements and that to look good. If you want to look good on the beach, no problem. I enjoyed that too. We need a little bit of that. Don't get me wrong. But it's not really sport specific.
Yeah, and then the next thing that you touched on that, gradually building your strength, which is hard when you're young. You do want to look good on the beach and impress the girls, but and you do start to get results pretty quickly, so you get attracted to it. But gradually letting your body grow into the sport, because like you mentioned, you're running so much, and the body contacts and all the rest of the other loads that's going on with the body. So taking your time with it, and for your endurance sake as well. So that's the tough part of the game, isn't it? It's not one specific thing. It's
you've got to be smart. So I watched your intro then, Jack, and fantastic the way that you train. So obviously you're smarter in knowing exactly what they need to do. They don't have to do bodybuilding weights. I did a little bit of that. I started looking at these bodybuilding magazines, going, this is how you get stronger. We didn't have the internet back then. I'm looking at Arnold going, mate, geez, look at the size of him or some other physiques. And I'm like, man, I'd love to have a body like that. What are they doing? We're doing these heavy weights, and now my shoulders are stuffed. My hip's not that good. Probably not the hip because of the weight, maybe footy, but my shoulders definitely made because of the weight. And so they're just got to be really careful. And so if you put on too much size too, eventually in the longer term, it's not good when you're carrying so much weight, in particular football when you're running kilometres. So you really, if I turn back the time and I walked into the game now, I would definitely keep the physique. I enter a little bit of size, but more like an athlete, definitely more so than, the bulk that I carried back when I played footy. In saying that, though, at the age of 26, 27, at the peak of my powers, I was playing at maybe 98 kilos, maybe 99, 97, mainly 98 kilos, but I was still able to run and do all that. But as I got older, I had to just come down a little bit. Although my weight didn't change, the size of me just started to decrease a bit too, because as you get older, it's harder to carry all that weight.
And you were a part of success early in your career. What was it like being part of a premiership team?
It was the greatest year of my life in 1995. We only lost 2 games for the entire season. It was an AFL record until Essendon beat it in year 2000. I was 22 years of age, and we got to the finals after being very unlucky in 94, losing in straight sets. We had some ageing superstars in our team that everyone knew their time was limited. Everything came together that year. We lost to the 2 bottom teams. I don't even know how, but we got to we almost lost to Brisbane Bears back then in the first final. We only won by 14 points or something, but the prelim final, we smashed North Melbourne, who were a great team under Dennis Pagan. And then come grand final, I don't know how, but Geelong were favourites to win. But I was standing there on the MCG, in the middle of the MCG, in front of 90,000 people halfway through the last quarter. And I'm looking around, and we're 80-odd points in front of that stage. And I'm like, I'm about to be a premiership player here. So that was the most incredible day of my life as a young kid watching AFL grand finals. I wanted to play AFL, don't get me wrong, but premierships didn't even come to my mind. It was almost like they were surreal. How lucky are these guys? Well, I was there to yeah. And 93, when Carlton played against Essendon, I was emergency, so I didn't get a game, and I was absolutely shattered watching Ange Christou, my good mate, out there. I mean, obviously wishing him all the best, but I just wanted to be out there playing in the grand final. It came 2 years later, and luckily we won that one.
Yeah, 80 points. There wouldn't be many players that would be able to appreciate that and soak it up like you did. It's pretty cool that you did do that. And look around the ground.
Yeah, half time we were ahead by a heap, and then we had that big melee when Billy Brownless tackled Ange after the siren, and then I jumped in, and everyone just jumped in. And but I still never felt safe, because in 93 I was watching the prelim Adelaide and Essendon. Adelaide were destroying Essendon, and Essendon came out in the second half and just did it, and they won. So that was like ringing through my head.
In the mind, yeah.
Yeah, and by 3/4 time you sort of knew, like we're that far ahead. And we only won by, at the end we won by 61 points because Geelong kicked a few goals at the end, but we could have easily won by 100 points that game. And but it wasn't about how much you win by; it was about winning that premiership, and that's what we did.
And it was everything that you thought it would be, the dream of winning a premiership.
Better, it was better because I went through some really difficult times in 91, not getting a game, 92 6 games, 93 8 games. I got dropped halfway through 94, and I thought it was the end of my career. I almost tapped out, as they'd say, in UFC, you tap out. I almost did. I'm forever grateful when I look back at my career, and I say amongst all the highlights, I'm just so happy that I persisted and kept going through very dark times. And like what I said before, I had great family support and my best mate Sash as well. So it was difficult. And so I went through a lot, emotional roller coaster. But, I don't think Parkin really understood how to play me, and didn't probably understand what sort of player he had also. I think other coaches have to see things in me and just say, Parko, but, he can do this and that and whatever. I love Parko, don't get me wrong. But I could have easily missed out on an AFL career just because, maybe a coach couldn't see the talent that I had. So I was just in time. So 95 was so bittersweet for me after everything that I went through, unsure that if I was ever going to be at the football club, to eventually cementing my position in the second half of 94 and then winning that grand final premiership.
Wow. For everyone listening now, just like you said, persistence and how important it is to, fight through the challenging times, but also support and how important it is to have good mates, good environment around you. So thanks for sharing, mate. That's you mentioned the challenging times, like broadly, if you don't mind going into in a bit more detail. What for players that maybe are in and out of a side, or they want to get into a NAB league, or they're having a few setbacks. What were some things that you did to keep yourself in check and keep yourself getting better?
It was hard, man. I think it was a couple of times. I think there was one game my parents just left when they just said, mate, he's not even trying. I just mentally was exhausted because I tried everything and I was still playing reserves footy. I felt like I was better than other players and I didn't feel like I was getting treated fairly. So don't get me wrong. I guess I persisted because I had a contract and I had to keep turning up. But there were some really dark times during then. And many times I went home and cried and like, what else do I need to do? I remember there was one reserve game I started at centre back and I think I had 14 possessions or something, but then they put me in the midfield and by the end I had 42. So I got 28 possessions in the second half. I never really played in the midfield. And, I still didn't get picked. So I was just like, what do I have to do? What do I need to do to make it in this team? And then, I don't know, I went to see sports psychologist Anthony Stewart. He taught me these words, I can, I will, you just watch me. And he made me highlight them in my diary. Those words changed my life forever. And so I've got to thank Anthony Stewart because I haven't really probably mentioned him on here, but that's when David Parkin said, all right, we'll play you on the wing. This was 1994. I had about 26 touches. I had 22 kicks, 4 handballs that game there. And then every week I was in the best players, except for probably the last final that we played when we got bombed out by Geelong, where I started really well in the first half and then I just faded away. But I was in the best players every week after that. So that was my time. That was my moment. But before that, I thought it was the end of my career. Jack, I always tell people this too, is that if you had have asked me 91, 92, 93 or 94, and even 95 and said you're going to make the AFL Hall of Fame with the start that I had, I would have said, you are kidding me. I would have just be happy to play a few games and that's it. So, you keep persisting. And at the end of it, luckily I did, because everything I get now is all because I persisted during that time.
Yeah, it's so good to hear that, because now you're known as this legend and well decorated and you've done it all. But to hear that that's 4 years there of your life, it's not like it's a month of challenging time. It's 4 years is a very long time for a young person to go through. But it shaped you, like you said, to what you've done, and it allows you to be really. It almost sounds like it made it even sweeter, the grand final, because of going through those tough times. Right?
Yeah, I agree. It made me the person I was. Maybe if I got it too easy, I wouldn't have pushed as hard. I wouldn't have been mentally prepared, but it hardened me up. And so I just continue on. And, I take those things in my life after football retired too, in my business world, to just keep persisting, keep believing, keep going. And then, eventually you can break through. You just don't know when. It's one moment, one comment that you hear, or just something in you that just impacts you, and then you never look back.
Yeah, you get a break. And you mentioned Anthony Stewart.
Yeah.
What did sports psychologist? What was sort of, as an AFL player back then? Like, it's quite common now to clubs to have a sports psychologist, but back then, was that ahead of its time, or was that common practice for players to seek working on their mental game?
I dare say ahead of its time. David Parkin and the club said, do you want to go and see a sports psychologist? I said, yeah, anything to make me play, whatever it takes. So I went to see him. It was just fantastic. I never used a diary before then. He said, Kouta, get your diary. You're going to buy a diary and you're going to start doing daily activities, because, I was sitting around at home, lazing around. The day would just go by and not achieve much. So I started, and he said, you've got to start ringing people. If they're calling you, you've got to ring people back. So I was like ringing and that, go for a swim, do my run, whatever it was, I just planned. And he goes, at the end of the day, you're going to tick, tick, tick. You're going to write at the top and highlight it. I can, I will. You just watch me. And I highlighted it. I used to close my diary in case my parents seen it, and they might have thought I was going a bit loopy, because in 1994 to do stuff like that was probably a bit like, oh, is this guy all right? And so I did that, and I started using my diary. And then, of course, he said, every time you go to training, you've got to pick one thing. If it's marking tonight, you're going to go there with the intentions of mark, vice-like grip. You're not going to miss a mark, and your whole training's going to be focused on that. I was like, okay. So I went there, used to get to training early, and I was like, okay, marking, kick the ball in, mark, get out there, kicking, kick, handball, whatever it was, run fast, like run to the cone, sprint to the cone, and those little things just started, and then that was it. After that, things started to really unfold.
You mentioned earlier you wouldn't rate yourself as high work rate, but you're very coachable. I can see that starting to come through, because you could easily see back then, like you said, it almost would be embarrassing to have a journal and do that, but you just did everything that someone that you trusted asked. Like, it sounds like you're very trusting as well. Did you initially fight it, or did you just buy into it straight away because that's what the coach said? So let's say this sports psych. You said, "Yep, let's do it," and you just pour yourself into it.
I was in. Yeah, as soon as I did, man, I just trusted Anthony Stewart as well. And I said, yep, okay. And I went to, focus on a game with three things, maybe hard running, whatever, good start, be physical, vice-like grip. That means every mark I was going for was like, boom, vice-like grip. And so I was in. I've always believed that I've been coachable. But I always felt like I always needed a coach that maybe could see the potential in me, maybe just put their arm around me and say, I believe in you. And that's what Wayne Britton and Barry Mitchell did when they came to the club, and they propelled my game to even another level because of the belief that they had in me. And Brits and Mitchell would always say, mate, to Parker, do you know what you've got here? And so they started training me a little bit, bit more, and taking me under their wing. And then that was it. Then my game started to really propel.
Fantastic. We're just going to have a quick drink break, guys. This is a short video about our academy, and then we've got Lucas, one of our academy members, coming on to ask Kouta a question. So quick 30-second drink break. Hi, I'm Jack McLean, an AFL football strength and conditioning coach, and I want to introduce you to the Prepare Like a Pro Academy. Our academy is a subscription-based platform where you can sign up to be a part of our community. If you get to the end of each episode of the podcast and are hungry for more, this is for you. Designed for aspiring AFL athletes and staff, you'll receive heaps of bonus weekly content, learn who the guests are in advance, and submit questions. Access to our Facebook group with Jack and other Prepare Like a Pro coaches. You'll be able to receive merchandise, program discounts, and freebies, and get free access to our live events, exercise technique database, and much more. This is a great way for you to support the podcast, and it helps me with production and release of epic content for you guys each week. Your contribution goes a long way in making the Prepare Like a Pro community possible. For a small monthly fee, you'll have access to all of the special content released on our Academy forums. There's no lock-in, and you can cancel absolutely anytime. And welcome back, guys, to Prepare Like a Pro live chat. I'm just going to bring Lucas on now. He's our newest member. Bear with me. Here we go. There we are.
Hey, mate,
how you going, Lucas?
Good, mate. How are you?
Going well. Hold on. Let's get the great man in the main spot. There you go. Yep, we can. And we'll put you up here. There you go, Lucas. Take it away, mate.
I've just got the one. I'm pretty shocking for nerves before a game. So is there anything that you do to sort of get the nerves out of the way for a big game?
Good on you, Lucas, mate. Thank you for that question. Good to see you there. I don't know, man. Like, my brother always said it too when it comes to big occasion. I was always there and producing my best. Even as a junior athlete, every time I went to Vic Champs or National Champs, I always somehow produced my personal best at those times. I think I thrived on the big occasion. In terms of nervous, probably the most nervous I ever was the grand final, AFL grand final, where I felt like almost like I just had no energy walking into that ground at MCG. Luckily, I had a good mate, Ange Christou, who was a larrikin. He was the complete opposite of me. He had to be like free, and so he didn't want to overthink about the game. I had to be there. I had to visualise the game. I had to make sure that this mind was spot on. And then I remember just having a bit of a kick and a bit of a laugh with him. And as soon as I started to laugh or whatever, I just relaxed that little bit more. And that nervous energy, Lucas, can really zap your energy, So if you think too much, it's a fine line that you have to get the right balance about, okay? And so if you can do that, you'll start to perform well. If you feel like you're over nervous, man, just smile and be happy. The best games that I played, I think, when I woke up in the morning with a big smile, just it's great to be alive. Let's go. You know what I mean? And that's probably the best way to take it. So don't ever put pressure. Whatever the outcome is, it is. And if you put too much pressure on yourself, you usually the game's really hard. But if you go there and say, mate, I'm just going to tackle, I'm going to chase, I'm going to hit him hard, and you do all those little things, the rest of it unfolds. And if it's not your day, it's not your day. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, that was all. That's all I could think of. It covered everything else.
Awesome, Lucas. Thanks for jumping on, mate. That's Kouta. Is coaching something you're interested in?
I've always wanted to. Back when I first retired, I wanted to get back into the AFL, but the doors were locked and whatever. I coached the world team once, and that was a lot of fun. They went from never ever winning a game and we won the championship, and then the next year they made it even harder. They pulled a few things, and I don't know. Then the next year we couldn't win because the team that they gave me was just too hard. So that was good fun. I love that. So anyway, my young boy plays footy. Maybe one day I'll help coach him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just to go off the cuff like that, to answer it. That in depth is a skill in itself. So especially when you've got the experience and the empathy with what you've done, it could be an exciting thing for your son. How old's your son?
He's 11. He just turned 11 last month, August, July. Yeah, last month.
Very good. Cool. Well, we've got Kane Irvin. He's written, "What's most important skill as a midfielder?"
I think nowadays, obviously, the running, you've got to be able to run. That fitness part, and people don't even realise. So even my son that plays basketball, I'm like, man, you've got to have fitness. That fitness is the key. When I trained harder, the game was easier. So I made training harder than what the game was. So coming to the game, and the game was easier. And I could be equally as strong as a player, and I could be equally as fast or whatever. But if you're not as fit as them, they'll be stronger than you, and they'll outrun you and obviously defeat you. Your fitness is the key to everything, no matter how strong. Well, you'll see big bulky guys come out and play footy, but if you can outrun them because they're not as fit, all of a sudden their strength becomes their weakness, because once they're tired, mate, you can push them over and they're done and dusted. So fitness is the key to everything, in my opinion. And if you're not fit enough, you can't kick the ball well, you can't chase that well. You've got to be match fit.
Yeah, impacts everything. Couldn't agree more. And we've got a pre-game routine. Kane's written. Did you have a pre-game routine?
Oh my God, man! I retired 14 years ago. My pre-game routine, I think I used to just sleep in a bit. I always visualised what I had to do. I didn't really eat too much food. I always had that ball in my hand, and that ball even the night before, man. The night before, in all honesty, I used to sit in my room for a good 20, 30 minutes and just visualise what I had to do, listen to music, pretend that I was playing the game, and I had the ball in my hands just in the dark and just throwing it up, and just got used to it like that. So that was sort of my preparation towards the game. I never really went out the night before, in all honesty.
And leadership, you did your younger career, like younger days. So most important quality for a captain, you're also an AFL captain as well. So on leadership, what do you think are some important qualities?
Well, lead by example, number one. Work hard, train hard, be a support. Put belief into the team. They're all the things. Some guys don't realise how good they can be. In times of struggle, man, you've got to stand tall and be brave. That's leadership qualities, and even off the field too. So on and off the field, you've got to be good. You got to be good.
And then last two, was there a coach or role model you looked up to when you were younger?
I was a Collingwood supporter. A lot of the Collingwood players I looked up to, and I don't know if there was one particular one I wanted to really base my game around. I don't think I ever thought that sort of way. I loved a lot of the players in terms of coach too before I started playing. No, not really. Not really.
Yeah. And what about this one from Ethan Paul? Best player you've played with?
There was a guy, he came from Bendigo and tried out in the under-19s at Carlton. They said it was too slow, so he went back to Bendigo and won a competition best and fairest. And then he got invited, or he either might have been called the Geelong coach back then, and asked if he can go and train. And their first year there, I think he may have been won the best and fairest. I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, he wanted a little bit more money. They said no. Sydney offered him big money, went there, won a Brownlow medal in Sydney. Then Carlton decided to eventually get him back to Carlton. He won a Brownlow medal at Carlton too, and that was Greg Williams. He was the best player I played with. He was phenomenal. In terms of athlete, he was the complete opposite. Wasn't quick. Didn't have the best endurance. Was okay. He had this here. He had the heart. and somehow those two there, he was just an unbelievable player, tough and hard, and could find the ball. His first game at Geelong, when he went there, I think his opposition player for the day, I think his dad said, look, you make sure you know what this player is all about, and he had no idea. Well, he knew about him at the end of the game because Greg Williams had something like 35 or 38 possessions. So that was his first game of AFL footy. Just crazy to think of how much, possessions and ball. He was just hard at it, Diesel.
And then kind of Spears, the final question from the followers. Did you have many injuries while you were young?
Well, when I was young, maybe not so many. If anything, it was my sprained ankles that I used to have issues with. So my ankles, if anything like that. Otherwise, I was pretty good. Even when I got to the AFL, like I had a couple here and there. I played over 100 senior games in a row, and then the injury started. And they didn't stop after that. So not too many. In all honesty, when I was young, considering the amount of sport that I played, I was pretty lucky.
Awesome, mate. Well, yeah, thanks so much. And thanks for the members for sending in those questions. That great questions, guys. I'm sure you got plenty out of that, and hopefully you wrote down some good notes. For anyone that's tuning in late as well, we'll post this on our YouTube channel, and the recording for the podcast come out very soon. We'll start to wrap it up, mate. You're now working in the fitness and health industry, and I've seen a lot of the posts that you're doing, inspiring people to live better lifestyles. It's probably no more important people than people like yourself to help people feel good about themselves at this current day with all the challenges that are going on. Was that something that came naturally to you post-career? Talk us about how you got into the fitness and health industry.
Well, it was more just because of the Herbalife nutrition. When 11 years ago, I was really unwell. Sometimes sleep 11 hours a night, or get home from work and still sleep on the couch, and had all these other health issues. So I went to doctors, allergy specialists anyway. I was eating organic food. Nothing helped until a friend of mine introduced me to Herbalife, and I was a skeptic. But I knew he looked good, and so I thought, mate, I'll try the products. And the products within 6 days changed my life. And so I fell in love with Herbalife nutrition. I don't say I just have that. I have whole foods as well. I still enjoy my pizzas. I had a pizza tonight, actually. Pasta. I still eat my breads. Like, I just enjoy my foods, but throughout the day I smash my Herbalife nutrition. So that's how I sort of got into it. And from there we started Kouta Fit clubs, where we really focused on 20% exercise, 80% nutrition, and 100% mindset. So that was our philosophy ever since then. So I fell in love with what I do because I work from home. It's a lifestyle business, and it still gives me opportunities to do other things that I love. And so I've been very, very lucky because, in all honesty, Jack, I was a lost soul when I finished football, in particular when no doors were open for me in the AFL when I inquired. And they said, we haven't got a budget. And about 3 months later, they signed up 2 players. So there's always that. And, I went back to Carlton and all the doors were closed. I was just like, God damn, what's happened here? All these years that I played there. Walked in when I was 14 and Carlton left when I was 34. So I'm lucky I've got something that I love with a passion again. I've got to set goals. I've got to improve every single day. And I try to inspire people. I've helped hundreds of people with the programs, plus, the mindset part as well. And I look forward to doing it for the rest of my life, and I'll continue to help people as much as I can.
Yeah, fantastic. That's such a great message, and to have people like yourself doing that for others is makes it so much easier, I guess, for everyone to get through normal life. But particularly, I think now it's really important that they're preaching those messages, like you said, with lifestyle, looking after your body, but also your mental health as well. So, good to have you in the industry speaking those words, guys, because you're getting a massive reach as well. So it's you're doing great things. What are you excited about for 2021? What's on the horizon for you?
I don't know. Like, I'll spend a lot of time with my family. My oldest boy's 18. I love watching him train, and I'll spend time with the family. I don't think anything will really change. We're in lockdown so often now, and so I try to spend as much time as I can with my family, and continue to just improve every single day. I treat lockdowns like as if I was going to work. I still get up early. I still, I do my meditations. I stretch. I do all those sort of things to just get that body and mind right, in the morning, and then I get to work after that. And so that way I get to spend a little bit of time with the family also.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for coming on, mate, and spending the last sort of hour on the podcast. Really appreciate it. And fingers crossed us Melburnians, we get out soon, and we can go to Kouta Fit and do some training. So for those that want to join your club and buy Herbalife Nutrition, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
I just reach out on Instagram or my public Facebook page, and I'll reply back to people, no problem. But yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thanks again, Kouta.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, everyone, for listening to. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, man.
Cheers, mate. Speak
See you,
soon.
buddy. Bye.
What a chat, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you tuned in late and you missed some of that episode with Anthony Koutoufides, be sure to catch it from the very beginning. He gave plenty of information and dropped plenty of practical tips that you can do for both developing footballers, but also those that just want to get better at anything they're doing around getting healthier, as well as just being more productive in life. So definitely recommend catching the whole chat. And for those that are watching us right to the end, that are watching this live episode, I'm going to do a special giveaway for you guys. So we're going to do a free 4-week strength and conditioning program. All you need to do is screenshot your favorite Prepare Like a Pro podcast episode and post it on your Instagram story. Remember to tag Prepare Like a Pro, and we'll hook you up with a 4-week program. So that's everyone that does that, that's tuned in and watched this show with Kouta. Thanks, guys. Until next time.